From the campus of Yale University, this is Business Talk with Jim Campbell, nationally syndicated across the country on the Biz Talk Radio Network and coming to you from our flagship stations, Yale Radio WYBC and 1490 AM WGCH Greenwich. All talk and all business, 60 minutes of radio with leading figures from the world of business along with the business of politics and sports. Taking a bold stand against white nationalism, the former governor of Virginia during the Charlottesville tragedy, and now just after the mass murders in El Paso and Dayton, we'll hear the inside story from Governor Terry McAuliffe of the violent, hateful Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. He'll tell us how to prevent other Charlottesvilles. That's all tonight on Business Talk with Jim Campbell. Terry McAuliffe served as governor of Virginia from 2014 to 2018, chair of the National Governors Association from 2016 to 2017, chairman of presidential campaigns of both Bill and Hillary Clinton, former chairman of the Democratic National Party. His first book, What a Party, was number 5 on the New York Times bestseller list, number 1 on the Washington Post list, and this new book, destined to become the definitive behind-the-scenes account of Beyond Charlottesville, taking a stand against white nationalism, just hit the New York Times bestseller itself.
I have a message to all the white supremacists and the Nazis who came into Charlottesville today. Our message is plain and simple. Go home. You are not wanted in this great Commonwealth. Shame on you. You pretend that you're patriots, but you are anything but a patriot. You want to talk about patriots, talk about Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, who brought our country together. You think about the patriots today, the young men and women who are wearing the cloth of our country. Somewhere around the globe, they're putting their life in danger. They're patriots. You are not. You came here today to hurt people. And you did hurt people. But my message is clear. We are stronger than you.
Welcome, Governor. Honored to have you. That was really passionate.
Thank you, Jim. It was a tough day.
Tough day, and that was August 11th, 12th weekend of 2017. And to go through this quickly, you phoned President Trump. You got a sense that he was going to help diffuse this, and what happened?
That's a great question. So the president called me in the morning. Obviously, he called the governor of the state in a crisis, and I explained what was happening. I had 1,000 of these neo-Nazis, white supremacists, screaming the most vile things, beating up people, and they're all carrying weapons. And I talked, and I said, Mr. President, your rhetoric's got to stop. This hate speech going on is really dividing the country. And we had a good conversation about it. And he agreed we got to move on. So I hung up the phone, said he'd do his press conference. I'd wait for him. But then a half an hour went by, an hour went by, hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5. And what happened, my best guesstimate, Jim, is that, Miller or Bannon or one of the guys in the White House said to the president, no. You are not going to condemn neo-Nazis. You're not going to condemn white supremacists. You're not. And he came out that day, and he said there were good people on both sides. Well, I was there. There are not good people with their swastikas, their Adolf Hitler T-shirts, screaming at Jews that we want to burn you like we burned you in Auschwitz. I'm sorry. The president lost his moral authority. He came out as a full-fledged white nationalist racist that day.
So now we've just had Dayton and El Paso. Are you in the same position of his coming up a little on this stuff, or what's the level of accountability?
Oh, he's culpable. There's no question about it. I mean, clearly the killer from El Paso, you look at his manifesto, he talks about building a white America, and a lot of the tweets from Trump. Listen, Trump has said that all Mexicans are, rapists and murderers, and he wanted to ban all Muslims from our country. He retweeted neo-Nazi white supremacists when he was running for president. He has created, Jim, this culture in this country. In the old days, these racists would wear hoods and they do it at night. Because of Trump, they feel emboldened, and they can come out in the middle of downtown Charlottesville at 10 o'clock in the morning and say these types of things. And he's culpable. And that's why I was disappointed in his speech the other day. He should have come forth and said, I apologize. My hate rhetoric has stirred people up. I'm going to stop it. And we'd be in a different place in this country today. But, that's not who Donald Trump is. I don't say it lightly.
When you were running the state of Virginia, you see there are 378 Confederate monuments still, and very few for the Revolutionary War, and of course the Robert E. Lee statues. Was it the culture Was changing the culture of Virginia a big challenge as well?
Well, and I talked at the beginning of the book how when I ran for governor, I was from New York. My experience, when I was out campaigning, I went, ran into a Ku Klux Klan rally at one event. I didn't know, to be honest with you, Jim, that the Ku Klux Klan was still having rallies. I had, my wife was insulted at another event where she gave a guy a flyer, the guy running the event, a huge political event. And he said, I'd never vote for your husband because he's an N lover. And it's just disgraceful. But you know what? You can't define a whole state by a few racists. And that's the same thing I said about the folks at Charlottesville. 1,000 people. They came in from 39 states. We're a nation of 330 million. But the problem we have in this country today is that people feel emboldened. And I worked hard as governor. I've restored more felon rights than any governor in American history. I did more pardons than any governor in Virginia history. I leaned in. I took the Confederate flag off the license plate in Virginia. I did everything I possibly could to move Virginia forward. And the good news is we're a different state today. That's why Amazon, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, all putting operations in Virginia, open and welcoming, but it's taken some time.
In fact, I found that you restored, is restoration of voting rights, is it, for 206,000 Virginians?
That's right. So we had a horrible system in Virginia that if you were a felon, and remember, a felon, Jim, is anything over $200. If you stole anything over $200, you were permanently disenfranchised for the rest of your life. We were one of 3 states. And it goes back to 1901 when a state senator by the name of Glass put it in our Constitution and said, I'm doing this, quote, to eliminate the darky from being a political factor in Virginia. Well, 114 years later, with a swipe of my pen, I gave everybody back their right to vote. En masse, going back 75 years. Republicans sued me, took me to court, and I ultimately won. And now we have several 100,000 people that have their right to vote back. But I also, Jim, in the book, talk about a racist criminal justice system. I talk about one man who I pardoned walking out the door, Lenny Singleton. Lenny Singleton was a drug addict. He had problems with drugs, of course. And you know what? He did 5 robberies. The most he stole combined for all 5 robberies was $535. And nobody, Jim, was ever injured. What do you think his sentence as a young African-American for stealing $535 was?
I don't even want to guess.
Take a guess.
Can you?
$535.
I would have said it should have been 18 months, 2 years, 5 years.
Yeah, close. 2 life sentences plus 130 years.
It's worse than Madoff.
Right.
Jesus.
I'm telling you. And so this is what we got to address. We got the bad as Charlottesville was. It did rip off the scab on racism, and it's prevalent. It exists today. And we got to lean in. We got inequities in school and sentencing and health care and housing. We got to lean in and deal with these issues.
Tell us a little bit about you. You watched the Charlottesville thing loading up from the vantage point of the governor's office. You did not have direct authority, I guess. What do you think? Right. Was stuff missed there, or you saw this happening? Go through it.
Yeah, so we call it unified command. Most states have it. You're up in Greenwich now, right, Jim?
Yes, sir.
So in Greenwich, if you had a crisis, the city of Greenwich, if it happened there, would be in control, and the state would be there in support. Mm-hmm. So in Charlottesville, they ran the show, and I make some things that needed to be fixed. Their permitting process, they gave this permit to these Unite the Right knuckleheads, and they didn't put any restrictions. They didn't, banning poles and sticks. The park that it was held in was too small. The time was too long, 5 hours. So my point is not being critical, but we need to do a better job on the front end of constraining and putting restrictions around these people. The key to controlling a protest is to keep the two sides separated. This park was like your backyard. There is no way you could have 1,000 armed people and 1,000 or 2,000 counter-protesters in this. It was just a volatile mix. That permit should never have been granted in the manner in which it was. And finally, the city on Wednesday night said we're going to move it from Emancipation Park up to McIntyre. McIntyre was a big park. You could keep people separated. And unfortunately, the ACLU sued on behalf of the neo-Nazis And the judge at Friday night at 9 o'clock said, no, we're going to let them keep it at this park. They were wrong. The ACLU was wrong. The judge was wrong. I'm for First Amendment. But let me tell you this. If law enforcement says I can't keep you safe, that should trump those First Amendment concerns.
You'll see the Business Talk with Jim Campbell from the Biz Talk Radio Network, 350 stations around the country. Go to biztalkradio.com to find the station closest to you, to listen over the Internet, to access our inventory of podcasts. Coming next with Terry McAuliffe, tragic outcome in Charlottesville.
Would you like to host your own radio program or podcast? Park City Productions 06604 is a Bridgeport, Connecticut-based radio broadcast solutions company. Follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's Park City Productions 06604. Call us at 203-522-8801.
Our guest, the former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe. He was governor during the Charlottesville White Nationalist rally back in 2017. How do you, Bush had this 9/11. What hits you when you get a sense of a defining moment like this in your life and in the term of governorship? How did it hit you? When did you know?
Well, it was, you're so busy during the day, Dio, and I finally declared a state of emergency, and so at about 11:15, I'd seen enough through my people on the ground, and I wasn't supposed to call the state of emergency. The city was, but I'd seen enough. And so about 11:21, I authorized the state police to move in. They cleared the park in about 11 minutes. The National Guard came in, secured the park. So at this point, by 11:50 on Saturday morning, we felt pretty good. I mean, we'd had some fights, but no one had really gone to the hospital that was serious. And no property damage. But then, as you know, Jim, about an hour and a half later, this James Field nut weaponized his car, ran into a crowd of counter-protesters and injured 35 people and killed Heather Heyer, 32-year-old Heather Heyer. And then a couple hours later, the state police helicopter, my pilot and a former member of my security detail were killed that day. So it was hard, but when I went to give that speech that night, it was the hardest thing I had to do because Trump had so screwed up his speech. I knew I had to speak for Virginia and the country to say, this is not who we are. And just before I walked out, literally 5 minutes, they told me that the helicopter had crashed and that both of these troopers whom I was close to were killed. It was hard.
In fact, that was your helicopter, right?
That's the one I used. So my pilot that I used all the time, and Burke Bates had been on my personal security detail and had just gone over to be a helicopter pilot. And that night I went and saw both families, both of them with 2 young children. It just breaks your heart. But for Charlottesville, but for these folks coming in, Heather Heyer would be alive today, and most likely these 2 state troopers would be alive today.
What are the single most important things we need to get done so that these things don't keep happening?
I don't want to make today political, but getting rid of Donald Trump, only because he is inciting people with his rhetoric. It's just awful, the things he says. Elijah Cummings, the squad, is just doubling down on this white nationalism that, we got to make America all white. And, it's stirring up these people at home. And it's horrible. The other thing I talk about is we got to deal with education. You've got a young African-American kid goes to a school, doesn't have the same quality teacher, maybe not the same supplies or same infrastructure, and it rains and water comes in. We just got to get equities in our education system. To me, that's the biggest thing we can do, because that child, if he doesn't have early in life, he is destined to have problems the rest of his life, and it's not fair.
Terry, is Trump sort of a symptom of the dysfunction in Washington amongst both parties? And we have a generation of folks that haven't had any income increase and haven't had job improvements, and this is the kind of resentment that comes out of it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, income inequality, Jim, I agree, is one of the biggest things out there. People have not seen their personal financial system go up, and that is a frustration that people are dealing with. I mean, listen, Washington's broken. I mean, that's why I always think a governor should be the president because, you're a CEO. You got to run your state. You got to balance the budget. You got to create jobs. You got to build roads. You got to clean roads. Folks in the Senate get to talk all day. They don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And we do have dysfunction. These gerrymandered districts are horrible. But you just got to get back to a place where people get in and, do the job that they're supposed to do. I inherited a huge deficit when I became governor. I left the biggest surplus in the history of the state. Hundreds of thousands of new jobs created. People were happy. Delivering for the people. They're not asking for much. By
the way, that leads me to ask, why aren't you running for president?
I wanted to, be honest with you. I spent a year preparing. I went to 25 states.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I was clearly the most progressive governor in Virginia history, but also the most pro-jobs.
Yes.
I turned our economy around, took unemployment from 5.4 to 3.6. Personal income went up 12.5%. But, there were 25 people running, and, I'm very close to Biden. I didn't think he was going to run, and then he decided to run. Most importantly is, we had a few issues in Virginia, so I've had to come back home and take charge of the elections in Virginia. I'm still a young man, Jim. Who knows?
Okay. Now, Trump, you knew him when he was a Democrat, apparently, which I didn't realize how much of a Democrat he really was, even pro-choice. You played golf.
Yeah.
You played golf with him. Does he know what he's doing? Is he competent? What are your thoughts?
He was a Democrat his whole life. He was pro-gay rights, pro-choice. I mean, his whole thing was a charade. I talk in the book about meeting with him. He gave me a check for $25,000 when I ran for governor in 2009. In early 2011, like January, I went back up again, said I'm re-gearing it up again. And I said, I can't help you again. I may run for president. I said, Democrat or Republican? He said, well, I'm really not sure, but if I give you a check with and I'm running as a Republican, that would hurt me. Trump is not a Republican. Trump is Trump. And he just has no moral core. That's the most bothersome thing to me. I go to the end of the mat with things I believe in. Even Republicans in the legislature said, no one should be surprised. He said he was going to do this. He believes in it. That's what elections are for. Trump is like a weather vane. It's all about how he gets reelected, and he doesn't care about any core issue.
Assault weapons ban, background checks. What are the most important things that could happen legislatively?
Oh my goodness! If we got the Senate, you would have right off the bat universal background checks, which are 94% of Americans support universal background checks. They all support assault weapon ban. They all support getting rid of these high-capacity magazines. And they all support closing the gun show loophole. This would happen, Jim, so fast. It would happen in Virginia this year when we win the legislature, and it will happen in the country in 2020. I mean, common sense. I mean, you know it. Common sense gun restrictions. We're not taking anybody's gun away, but there are people who shouldn't own guns.
Are the Democrats going to be able to contest Trump, or are they going to self-destruct with going too far left?
I don't think they're going to self-destruct. It's early. I honestly, Jim, think it's going to be very hard for Trump to win again. If you look at three states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania,
right,
we lost those three by 77,000 votes,
right,
and yet 92 million people didn't vote. They woke up the next day and said, holy cow, how did that happen? And they came out big in 17, they came out big in 18, and they're going to come out big in 20. So we're going to win those three states, and we're not going to lose a Hillary state. So, it's almost impossible in my mind for Trump to win again unless, we screw it up, which we can, and, form a circular firing squad. But, odds are that Trump is going to be defeated. He can't in the electoral college states today, we win in a walk today.
I have to say, I enjoyed reading this book. I obviously am not from Virginia, so I'd always seen you as kind of a politician. You've run all these campaigns very close to the Clintons, and yet you come off here as a really passionate guy fighting against racism and all of the cynicism. The book is Beyond Charlottesville, Taking a Stand Against White Nationalism. Just hit the New York Times bestseller list. The guest has been former Governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe. Thanks to Terry. Thanks to our national audience. We'll see everybody again next time on Business Talk with Jim Campbell.